podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Old Head podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show. Please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you could please do that before we get into the show, I would much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. Peace. I'm Majestic.
My brother, Justice Raji.
Yeah. So today, I wanted to jump off, and you on your recommendation, but I had saw it and it was on my account, on my save for later on Netflix. Wanted to get your thoughts on, discuss a little bit about Supacell. Not all the way through. I watched, I think, it's interesting. The way the show is paced, it's sometimes hard to tell how long the episodes are. So I'm wherever I'm at. It's like, it seems like everybody, they've had the situation where they all kind of are aware there's other people with powers and some stuff happening and some other things. But so discuss the show, but also just sort of the interesting, maybe it's creative moment, we could say, in the last few years and this year, that the very particular experience of folks of the African diaspora, we could say, or the Caribbean diaspora, maybe more specifically or more heavily, the descendants of the Windrush generations, maybe in the Black British experience, and if that's a mischaracterization by the British homies, you know what I mean. The ones that I'm referring to as Black, that we would say as Black, not the other British homies. I'm not really into what y'all got to say. But my target, the target of this conversation, the subject matter of this conversation in the context. Yeah, there's a lot there. There's some interesting things. The show is actually, like I said, I'm still at the place where I know it has not made the turn where you get like the deeper understanding of what's happening with the powers, just as the FYI to the, no spoiler alert. Not that you was going to like run down everything that happens in the show or nothing. However, saying that to say, I wanted to get the ball in play and say, like, what were some of your thoughts when, when you were running through this series, but also, that energized your wanting to chop it up about this?
Yeah, a couple things. A couple things about kind of what it is and what it kind of represents in the broader context of us understanding what it means to be Black and British, and the contours of which, right? And again, like we discussed, I'm not trying to do comparisons, but I think the platform by which we're now seeing what it means to be British, Black British, and generally speaking, there still is a bias that means what it means to be from London, right? Because it's important for people to know there are Black people in England beyond the city of London, right? It's much like you was like, oh yeah, there are Black people in America. They're all in New York. It's like, no, they're all over. So much in the same way, from Bristol to Birmingham to Liverpool to Manchester to, Leeds, right? It kind of stops around Leeds. Having gone to Newcastle one time, you realize I was like, so what happened with Black folks above Leeds? They was like, yeah, that's when the weather turned. It was like, yeah. Like once you get up here by like Manchester, Liverpool, and Leeds, the weather gets real colder up there. Folks weren't really headed up there. Right. So so I understood why it seems to be this invisible line over there. And what I think it's a playoff of the other parts of them remaining very grounded in their experience through different means, right? Like the idea of Supercell. And one, I think just, not going too deep into it, that like there's something unique to Black people. There are some powers that are unique to us through our experience. And I'll leave that kind of where that is. But I do think that's a really, really powerful idea,
Yeah.
that there's something unique to us because of our experience and the shared experience that people are having. So when you really look at it and kind of pull it out, you're like, oh, okay, because I do find that also the writing tends to be a little different. Again, it's hard to compare five British shows to 150, right? Like Black shows in America. So I don't want to say, oh, well, the writing is just better, right? Because it's not a good comparison. But I do say it's very thoughtful writing. It's writing and actors who are good at playing themselves, and as we know, the eternal issue, they're good at playing us too, right? Like,
Yeah.
because the brother that was in BMF, and then You Can't Stop the Rain. What's the name? He's in there, and he's super British. The dude that's super strong.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So they're good at playing us, so it's good writing. But I just think it was like a good play. And then also a part of this is like this is done by a brother called named Ratman. So Ratman is like from the the ends, as they would say, right? In South London. In South London is kind of seen as the kind of most vibrant place, kind of Black London. Like, so, you hear about Brixton and Peckham and everything, even though there were Black folks in other parts, right? And Ratman had a series earlier, about 2 years ago, that was like, frankly, like super violent, right? It was like super violent. It was like the ends. It was all the stuff that like people know about, and it was called Blue Story. So it's just interesting to watch him do a show about some of the knife crime, and then now take it to like Black sci-fi, centering the Black British, talking about the government. It's just like, I think it's something that we should look at, and it's important for Black folks in America to recognize that there are multiple identities of being from the diaspora. And just as like everybody at one point didn't like the fact that New York, like people thought people only would hear music out of New York, or then hear hip hop out of California, and then it became a much more, national model. That it's the same way, and people are also having urban experiences in ways that are influential. Hence, Afrobeats.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah, I found it like and I think tying it to was it the brother that did 12 Years a Slave, and we started discussing, this was a while back now, the five movie series he did.
oh, Small X. Yeah,
Small Acts, you know what I'm saying? And then we like you have this place, and even watching the show, right? Like it was clear even from other shows, like so like Top Boy being maybe the one, like in terms of ones. So there's dramas that come from over there, and then you got shows that are maybe more intentionally comedic, right?
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? And it tends to be a pretty I mean, even though shows like Man Like Mo Beam, um, you know, waivers, just because the way they do comedy, that it's not all like there's some serious stuff in the conversation, right? And sometimes
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
dry, right? Sometimes it's not like like it's not like laugh
Right, not a laugh track behind it. Right.
like somebody, like studio audience sound that when to laugh, right? But the the aspect of the way the story even begins with, you know, framing really that all of these people, all of them have more complex lives than their way they're showing up in the story. You know what I'm saying? Which is a thing, I think, especially when like akin to, and I don't know overall enough about um the presence of black faces in British television to the scale that obviously I can rattle off stuff from my own life here, but I have a feel just over things I've watched over the last few years, comedians or entertainers from that space that have like I mean, not just one coming over here as taking our jobs. You know what I'm saying? Take out our jobs. But like, you know, they come over here playing American roles, not come over here in an American show playing a British character. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Right.
No,
So
absolutely.
right.
Right.
So then seeing those folks in British shows, from seeing Idris Elba as Stringer Bell and then later watching Luther, right?
Right.
Is a stark different is a different person, right? Like it's not even I mean, one, he doesn't use an accent as Stringer Bell, and some people still won't forgive him for being Stringer Bell, but that's a different conversation. Um, the the sense that something different has happened in the last 15, 20 years than what I think maybe was the place where black actors could show up in the previous time. You know what I'm saying? Even if you find older shows, not the Benny Hill age, but you know what I'm saying, whatever was in between.
Oh man, I wonder if we was going to get to talk about Benny Hill at some point. Like, oh man, like that was like a childhood trip. But anyway, I'm not going to
Yeah,
continue
yeah. I
with that.
mean, we can just hold it over here for a second because I think
Yeah, put that
it's
in the parking
important
lot.
in terms of right, like what comes over to us and when it comes over to us. So Benny Hill comes over to us in the 70s and 80s. Monty Python comes over to us, and then Mr. Bean. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I was about to say, bring me in, Mr.
you know what I
Bean.
mean, Mr. Bean comes. That show now, I went and found it on the junk. I want to start watching it because the clips with the old head. I think you see like he might be. I don't know if he's Nigerian descent or
Oh
West
man,
Indian.
yeah.
He be laying it down, hollering at the. I think that's. I don't know
Oh,
if
laying
that's his
that
wife
thing
or he's
down.
just trying to holler at her. But I'm like, I gotta watch this show because he be bugging.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, that's pretty spicy, my man. Like somebody's mama or auntie or something. You tone it down a little bit. But the the show starts where you it's like it's immediately engaging some things that are clearly I think I feel comfortable saying stuff that's happening in the moment right now, right there in terms of the perception of black folks, even though I know the knife crime and all that is not limited to black folks in terms of racial ethnically. I mean, I know the Asian community is associated with that. And then, well, just basically street crime, that's the weapon that's out there. They don't got hammers and pistols like we got out here. So if you are involved in various things, that's the if people are stepping up to weapons, that's what they're going to. But the aspect of uh my man trying to make his deliveries and the dude just stopping them yeah, you can't come in our state, like all those things. But then that with the young woman, the two young women that are friends, and the sister that's a nurse, and she's trying to you know live her life and look out for her friend. Her friend maybe makes some challenging choices in terms of who she wants to kick it with. But you know what I'm saying, that's your peoples, and it is what it is, right? Uh they're very they're relatable context, but they're also to me in their way, that way life happens where they live. You know what I'm saying? Not on the axis that it's not like it's mimicking America, I guess I would say. I don't feel like it's trying to copy something that is not, at least doesn't ring as authentic to what's happening, um, you know, in England or Britain, Great
Well,
Britain.
and I think that's a great point because it's, you know, is are you going to get an authentic Black British experience? It's not a mimicking of the American experience, even if they do have different color rags, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're still getting an authentic experience, which again I think is there's a broadening of sorts. Obviously, it's still kind of one dimensional, but it is a broadening for people, like now young people to start saying man them and you them, right? Like because they're seeing this kind of experience that rings authentically and rings like something that has weight to it, not something that's a facsimile of American culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think that's an important component of what does it mean when something is not a facsimile of Black American culture, because we're used to, in the context of here, always framing everyone else's conduct as some form of facsimile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And people get it in the Caribbean, and then increasingly in the African diaspora, house come to America. But that's also in certain cities. That's not like, you know, immigrants from different Black immigrants from different countries. It isn't like they spread across the country equally, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like people are in certain places, so there's still not that experience. So I think the music and these television shows are finally showing like a two-way street, and I just think that two-way street is very important for us to understand in the big picture.
Yeah.
That like our experiences are centered for us, but they're not the only Black experience. So what it means to be Black means something different other places, but nonetheless as authentic as yours.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the other piece that struck me listening was like the way the show was dealing with like they mentioned Brexit, right? They mentioned the world like outside of their situation changing, right? And how that's impacting what they're experiencing in their neighborhood or like the jobs. They're like they there's things that are referencing you their anxieties of where they live and like how they're situated in society.
That's a good point.
You know what I'm saying? But it's like it's not like right on the nose, you know what I mean? Which I think is good. Which at least for me, like I don't need the when the sister gets the promotion around the nursing and then like even the juxtaposition of how she nurses and how her peers are nursing, right? Like there's this energy that she's anxious about, and she did have, the misstep with missing time work or having to leave because of the just stuff that was happening. But like that's a very I feel like that's a very intentional, like that wasn't like I think like someone thought deeply about like I want to present the way this really feels when you're good at your what you do. And not only are you good, you clearly are kind of like the best person on this in this place in your job role, but stuff happens and things happen to you because of how you show up in the world that could cast doubt on that, and then you also internally can have an internal dialogue that you're like, yeah, I might not be good, or I might not be rewarded for being good at my work, you know what I mean, because of the way these experiences happen, because of the nature of the racism that is in these systems, the decision making that people will make that may overlook me, even though I'm doing what I need to do. Notwithstanding that I'm discovering I have superpowers and I already know what to do about that. Like in real time, like what?
Right. There were human frailties and anxieties that were societal, that were like to your point, you make a really good point here. They were like societal things, but they were subtle in the way they weren't like kind of the American either or.
Yeah.
Like someone's being willfully, don't think that the system has any impact to you, to someone who's constantly enveloped by the hells of the system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And both of those things sometimes strip away humanity,
Yeah.
and they strip away that nuance that I think, again, these shows, because they're at the place where they can do this and be more specific, and there are various platforms that if you can film it and it can find a crowd,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't need to go through the gatekeepers. So I think you can get stuff on Netflix. You can get good stuff on Tubi, because I don't want to launch into Tubi as all bad acting, right? But you can get you can get some good stuff as well as some other stuff, but because you can get it directly, you can direct it how you want it to be, and you can show those the contours and the nuances and the texture of those characters in ways that the audience connects with.
Yeah. And I think the thing that, like I said, I'm not all the way through, but it makes me think of um, they cloned Tyrone, right? And the like again, like that if you really in any is it's a difficult choice to tell a story involving sci-fi and superpowers or strange stuff happen with black folks, but then act like the realities of like the strange and terrible stuff that have happened to black folks due to racist
Right,
society,
right. Like it's
right? And
separate and
act
apart. Right.
right like oh yeah, they're worried about him because he runs so fast. It's like and he's black, and like everything that has happened to his community, you know, right? It's like present, it's still there, and so like how do you um you know, like how do you resolve? Like you know, I mean, I think of I mean, I'm not super comic dude, but like, how does Rhodey in the Marvel universe, you know, like Don Cheadle played Rhodey at least in the cinematic universe with some little bit at least nod to like at some point, no, Rhodey's aware that like he's a black man and on Earth, and like now he has this. He's the primary controller of this powerful like super suit that can destroy, that can take out whole armies by himself, right? And so
Right.
you can't have Rhodey doing too much because he's going to come up like because we're getting with Thanos, we all got time to deal with neo Nazis or whatever, right? Like, or as in terms of overt racist, right? And then and or subtle racism. Like, man, I wonder how many times Rhodey got passed over for promotion because nobody really wanted to promote him because of some unknown reason. They were, it's something about I have a hunch about him sometimes, but I'm not sure, right? And it's like, oh, because we know why. And anyway,
Right.
anybody served a long time in the military, at least if they're candid with you sometimes, yeah, it's sometimes better than other places, especially in this day and time, but other places not in any way different. Some of the negative things one can experience in terms of again other people's presidential prejudicial
Prejudicial.
thinking and your relationship.
I see what you did that there. Presidential thinking and
Yeah,
prejudice. I see what you did that there.
those two got real close together, but yeah, I'm saying
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes they
prejudicial.
do.
You know what I'm
Sometimes they do.
saying? So I think there was one of the like so I was just really in I'm enthralled with where the weirdest show's going, and like I was doing a couple things and watching like fold some clothes like when I do some work later tonight, like I can sit and because I was also starting to be worried I was missing stuff because I was trying to like do some other tasks, and I'm like might be missing
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of requires some attention.
yeah some subtle details. So getting invested in the character. So I think it's I guess one question I want to ask you too. I mean, I know you've had the opportunity to now, I think twice to spend time over that way. But also my recent travel and I wonder if do you think there's anything that you've seen in this or just in terms of a different dialogue about global blackness that I think we might be heading to, right, or in as we have all this like I think a footnote from my trip in Rwanda that I think I shared. So we had a driver that we were working with most of the days, and the driver use the screen on the in the car, and there's software you can do this with now. But like, instead of playing like just the song, it was like every song with like it was like the video version of the song, right? And the reason I think I thought it was significant is that, watching the the things that are shot in the videos and seeing all these different it's one of the first times I was able to sit and watch a lot of like Afrobeats songs like back to back to back and some replaying and how important like the video images were and a lot of the videos I started to pick up they're like filmed inside of houses or like spaces and like when that there's a commonality and a thread around like how folks are living that I started to see watching that many videos as we were driving or traveling regularly and it just got me thinking of and then even one of the things that was a big part of the way the folks who ran the conference. They had the students from the like video training program at the university, like doing all the filming and the video during the joint, and they was turning over like clips of the conference and like a recap video like the next day. It was very clear that like spreading messages, as I think we might have said. I don't know if we said it on I've heard you say about Chuck D saying we're in a visual audio culture.
Yeah, instead of being in the audio visual age, which I think everybody of a certain age, if you're like 45 and up, we were at the dawn of the audio visual age,
Mhm.
where now essentially we're in the visual audio age.
Yeah,
Like the actual, you know, visual is first before sometimes you hear a song or anything to do with that.
yeah. And but it was just striking that like I thought like observing other stuff, like looking around, as even I'm traveling back, in through the airport and other things. Like we are in a world where like getting the video message, the video form of a conversation, video form of the dramatic acting or the creative storytelling, whatever have you. Um, it really is important, right? It's important to how people see the world. It's important to folks understanding now. And okay, so the question with that context is like, do you see or think that there's something, you know, more kind of to this moment with a show like Supercell and some of the other like things that are happening that is maybe unique, or is there something that you feel like I have a feeling that there's like a seizing of the control uh of the image of these other places in the African diaspora that didn't have access to sort of the largesse that the US had in this time. But I'm curious of your thoughts on that idea.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think so. Um, I definitely think that there's a way that um, we're seeing these other presentations, and the reality of global media is that we're going to continue to see them. They're like not going away,
Mhm.
right? And those other places as being really clear about their experience and being able to do storytelling. Because I really think of the the rhythm and cadence of a lot of stuff that's coming out as just constant storytelling from the Black British perspective.
Mhm.
You know, it's telling their old stories. It's saying, okay, the reason we're like this is because in Mangrove Restaurant, here's how we were treated, and we had the Panthers, and here's what went on.
Mhm. Mhm.
So then that connects to what you may hear with the riots of '82 in Brixton, and again, not only Brixton, did you see them, but also Camden and other parts of London. Like, here's what drives us, and then here's where we are today. And I think that's being encapsulated by people in very like complete ways and nuanced ways, which again, we've had the benefit of like, I got to get a thing done. And then it has to exist in the context of what you might see then. So you might see black exploitation, and you might see very accurate portrayals and depictions of the black community. And then you might see things that are a bit cartoonish.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Then you get to movie making in the '80s for black folks, and you see that. And then those have their own things, right? We've had a lot of runway of trial and error, and I think ours has gone to the mean of, frankly, our most challenged states are now the kind of rule and exception in certain spaces, right? Where I
Mhm.
think they've been able to create, hey, there's a broad sense of us, right? Like even the fight with Tyler Perry and other black folks right now, and I'm not, I get Tyler Perry's perspective that he's kind of like, listen, this is a black experience. This may not be the one you want to people to see. This may not be parallel with Madam Vice President running, right? But this is a thing. The flip side of it is, yes, that's a thing, but that's also broadcasted to the globe and also shapes perspectives, right?
Mhm.
So I think they've been intentional about shaping the perspectives of them, even from very creative things, whether it was Top Boy, whether it was Blue Story, now to Supercell, to think about small acts, to like these things, like you're seeing them and they're defining themselves. I think that's also as a one aside where I think Drake is actually at his most powerful. I think Drake is probably, other than Burner Boy, probably closest to being and representing some component of the global black diaspora.
Mhm.
Like, okay, you're from Toronto, a global place of blackness, but your daddy's from Memphis, right? And you wanted to be with them dudes from Texas,
Right.
and you mimic Cameron and them, right? But yet you're still from Toronto and have that, and you've done a deep investment and engagement with London because y'all are frankly more similar than different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think he had a good place there. Like he's the one person. If he came out with an Ampiano song tomorrow and it was like the summer hit, I'd listen. I'd forgive his deep missteps and messing around with boy from Compton.
It's
Like you know what I mean? I, I try to I try to forget that you mess with the wrong dude. You know what I mean? Like because but he could do it and be authentic. He could do an piano song and I wouldn't think it was like being a culture for real, even though Kendrick's point notwithstanding. I do think there was a global blackness component to Drake that at points he picks up and puts down,
yeah, yeah. And
but
I
I
think
think it's a strength.
I think that even just represent. I think like Kendrick's criticism of him can be like fully accurate, and also like the problem with what Drake does as it relates to us is like it seems like he don't know when to stop the line. Like it's like you may not realize like, all right, man, like that's cool, but you from Toronto still, be from Toronto, like be from Toronto for a little bit. Like for don't present this world where some of us may lose track or not see you of that world. You know what I mean? And and then besides just the idea that like you are because you are touching into all these different like in many ways like pieces of global black musicality crossing into though, but also with the like very intentional sort of like pop. Like you are your intention is to be a popular artist that which in most cases leads to being how you say largely inoffensive in terms of your maybe your politics or subject matter. Um, which can have its own impact on negative impact on the communities that you're sourcing from, to do the music while, so that other people get to like feel like they're kicking it with those communities while kicking them communities in the guts on a day-to-day basis in terms of their social economic experience. Not saying I'm sure that's what Kendrick was going for, but that's what I took from it. So there we go. Um, say the additional piece in the story with like you got brother that spent some time in the system. You got the other cast that's in the street and look like he's on the high road to the system. Two of them really, but one for sure. The one is he's dabbling in the cannabis trade, which is most places now would not be a highway to probably go into prison, but you might, miss out on some opportunity. You get jammed up, selling outside of a legal. I don't know what the cannabis rules are in over there in Britain, but and then you got, you have this snapshot and the which should be a relatable story, I would think, across cultures, but younger people trying to like get their adult life going, right? Like that should be. That's not typically fodder that we always get the opportunity to like be the focal point of in this context the having the mix between those who are involved in like the gray economy to those who are just you know working joes, uh young medical professional. The other dude, I think the fast dude, I think he's in college or something. What's he doing? He's doing something, but he's got some family stuff, right? You got some family stuff. Like all of these all these people though are also dealing with the anxiety of when you're like in your late teens, early 20s, and you're trying to, set this, what's the foundation of what your adult life is going to be like. And, you know, saving money, getting a job, trying to get on, living on your own for the first time or living on your own for an extended amount of time. Like, maybe you've been, pushed out of the family household if you had one. Parental angst, all these like very common human challenges, and then again with the thing that you got superpowers and related to the specific experience of Black folks. So yeah, it's heavy matter there. I think I don't know. So say that to say go watch the Supercell, check it out.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
I would say I agree. Check it out, and I think gives the Small Axe series a look. Kind of British R&B, British, some even British hip hop. I think there's obviously they're in some ways again mimicking, you know, most
Oh,
challenging social factors.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that was,
Um,
I was like, wow, that's how they do it over there. I don't know if that's how they do it over there, but
yeah, I mean, again, I will say the visuals spot on, experience like that level of engagement spot on.
yeah.
Like that's how those places feel. It's brimming with that energy. They they did well. But yeah, I think us just being open and know that the Black experience in America, one, is not monolithic, and even in its similarities, that there are also continual evolving urban and rural, but for context of this kind of conversation, experiences
Mhm.
that, whether they be London, Dakar, Paris, Ghana, you know what I mean? Accra, like, Sierra Leone, Brazil, like they're all relative, and they all have complexities and nuances in the same way that we look at ours.
Mhm.
And I'll just stop there. And everyone ain't stealing from us.
Yeah.
Everybody ain't stealing from us. And sometimes you took stuff from other people, you just didn't know
Right.
that you took it because the person that showed it to you didn't tell you they took it.
Right. You just seen it and were like, oh, that's cool. And they were like, yeah, isn't it? And then you didn't ask a second question, like, yeah, where'd
And
yeah,
yeah, we do that culturally sometimes.
that happened. Absolutely. Absolutely. Uh, so in other things, and maybe this would be brief in a segue to another point just to close out our conversation today. But so the Olympics started. Uh, And I'm not in a position to have a robust conversation about the Olympics. But the one thing that did filter up to my life that's getting on my nerves is folks is various um a big to do about the opening ceremony floats of the boats and the horse and something else like there was a blue person. I think it was like, some Greco, I think it was a representation of like a Greek, I mean, Olympics did start,
Yeah.
they are based in a lot of Greek mythology, there, marathon and all that. But the, and I'll just say, just as a PSA, I don't care. I don't care. Like the idea that the symbolism is intended to portend some other thing. I mean, it. I mean, it. I mean, I guess performances and symbolic representation in art and visual performances do always represent some underlying things about a society, but they're often like references that we can figure out easier. I just like the idea that it's like the apocalypse and they're trying to tell us that something's happening or they're against the thing, like whatever wacky overly complicated conspiracy around world power and geopolitics. I'm out. Like y'all got it. If people that want to spend time worried about that, like I mean, I maybe I would rather discuss some of these things on the axis of like, well, that's weird colors, or like that's a very interesting way to represent that on a boat. And also, I don't watch opening game. I don't watch that. I didn't watch that. I was at a conference. Like who? I was in New
Right.
Orleans. Like, what am I
Yeah,
doing?
yeah.
In the hotel room watching the boats go down the river, down the Seine. Like, come on, man, let's get together out here, people. Go play with your
Yeah,
kids. So, anyway,
yeah.
but I want to
I
give
think
space because maybe it might be something I'm missing, and I might need.
no, I think here's where I look at it, and it's like truth is stranger than fiction.
Mhm.
So, kind of go back to, all of I'll say me, fears of me and other people at a certain time when people said there's only 5 years left and talked about
Oh yeah,
taking the mark of the beast and, you know, all the things, right?
all the stuff.
And, then it's like, hey, you're worried about a microchip and, hey, 20 years, 25 years later, you walk around with one in your pocket willingly. You got a computer that tells everyone in the world else in the world where you are at all times. And guess what? You don't want to live without it. Now, that is not me being fatalistic. That's just saying the reality of the truth that happened is stranger than the symbol that you were looking at.
Mhm.
So if somebody wanted to just have something that they could always identify where you are, it wouldn't be injecting in your teeth and going against your will. It might just be giving you something convenient. Because truth is stranger than fiction that way.
Mhm.
And there's also, and I share this with you, I'd like to get your take on it. Like, it's kind of connected to the conspiracies that I think people have been propagating around Vice President, for example, like Vice President Harris. Like,
Mhm.
the conspiracy and the propaganda to be like, this means this, or if someone told you something about this, this is a symbol of this, when it doesn't have to be a symbol of it just because it existed. And I think the conspiracies that people have bought into because of us living in a world where things have been hidden, things have been revealed however many years later, and there were people who were suspicious on the front end, and often they were rewarded by being correct, right?
Mhm.
So because of that, we're rushing a lot of other people who have not thought about stuff nearly as much, but they are still as suspicious
Mhm.
as those who have made it a life to be reasonably suspicious based on information and kind of pieces of a roadmap that lead you to a chilling conclusion, right?
Mhm.
So now we have people who were just suspicious because it's their job, they think, to be suspicious. They're the one that's going to tell you they don't like your sneakers. Why? Because everyone shouldn't like your sneakers. You know what I mean? Like, and that's just where they exist. So then you hear stories about who's really putting this person up. What this person really is going to do when they get there, or someone locked up thousands, tens of thousands of black men, and then it'd be like D.L. Hughley came out and said, like, my bad, I said that, but it was a lie, and I spread a lie.
Mhm.
And now, into his credit, said, now if you want to keep believing it, when I told you it was a lie, that's the separation between me, who was dealing with what I thought was correct information that was not, and I'm willing to say it's not now that it's not. Are you willing to say it's not if it's not? Or do you want to continue going with the story because there's something there that makes you feel like you're unable to think that this person can't be, a deeper, darker plot to quote unquote enslave you, where much of the enslavement is happening in front of your face. It's not being hidden.
Yeah, I
You
appreciate that.
know.
I think that like it gets to like the heart of the matter, right? So as I was thinking about us talking tonight, I was thinking of the chorus of the Stevie Wonder song. You know, like when you believe in things that you don't understand and you suffer. You know what I'm saying? Superstition is the way. You know what I mean? Like
Mm,
you believe
mm.
something, you suffer.
Wow.
You believe something you don't understand, and you suffer. Like and then it is so then it's like, oh well, I'm gonna do some other thing I don't understand to resolve the thing I don't understand. Right. And so then we
Right.
get into a like a feedback loop So like if the horse was the warning, the whomever, the so are you telling me that this is a different plot than people willfully pushing off, real climate change policy so they can maintain their profits a little bit longer, right? And the profits at the level they want to get them for a little bit longer, right? Like is those are those two things? So there's like a different thing someone's planning, right? Like if the indicator of this is that the global phenomenon of more authoritarian leaning political entities and parties um, gaining traction in societies that are experiencing, a current, sociological structural change, but also always still about fundamentally what has driven geopolitical change in our society is the control of resources and power, right? And so the I'll frame it as the harm that is done to the ideas of democratic society when societies that are largely democratic but still support non-democratic and unfair global geopolitical realities in because it's good for the bottom line, right? Like this is but so none of that stuff is what we talking about. We talking about like some other plot. It's like maybe it's not that deep. Like maybe there's like maybe we can draw clearer lines of action and motivation. And when it gets to like the facts though, right? Like in the reality of something, and I remember I listened to another conversation that mentioned, and just because where I was at, with the process, even in my own way that I orient to, making a decision especially on the presidential election, it's sort of like I'm gonna keep tracking and see how people's races are doing, and then if a person makes it all the way to the point where like okay this person is seriously a contender, right? And Biden basically once he won was it South Carolina and the other race, it was sort of like it's kind of over for everybody else
Yeah,
in
yeah,
2020,
that's what.
right? So it was a wrap now. But the reference I heard was like that was saying was like, well, she ran a really bad campaign in 2020, and I don't know. I don't have enough evidence on how her campaign went to know if she did really run a bad campaign. I know she clearly did not get do the campaign that was good enough to beat Biden, which
I,
means yes, it may have been bad, but it doesn't.
I will step in. I'll say this as somebody who was uh, deeply entwined in that kind of thing at that time.
Mhm,
She ran a campaign of what happens when you don't have a national apparatus
mhm,
and your rise is somewhat meteoric, right?
yeah,
Now, again, we can all look at, Obama, but that is an outliner. Like, that's outlier. Like, that's not a feature, that's a bug, right? Like, and so she ran a campaign like that, which is different. With big as California is, it's different than running a campaign in California. It's different than running a campaign in San Francisco. And so she ran that kind of campaign. But she was thoughtful and intentional and smart, which is why people would have made a decision to do what they did,
yeah, mhm,
you know.
yeah.
But
I,
I just think it's important because I think if not, we'll forget that like Joe Biden had decades of chips and chits ready to be pulled.
right.
And the his Sanders campaign apparatus was way better than his. It's just that he had timing. He had something that you can't account for, right?
Mhm,
He had something that you can't account for. He had a friend that said, you know, I want to win the election, and no one else is getting this out of my state except Joe Biden, and that's what happened.
yeah.
That was his firewall.
That's
You
how.
know,
Yeah. But anywhere I was going, like the other piece with that though was I remember hearing they she locked up everybody, and you know I was and being that I was in the day to day operational space of engagement with the criminal justice system, um, I'm very aware of California's incarceration practice. I was in active day to day, weekly collaboration around work and collective work with folks who were in California. Not that Kamala Harris is responsible for the creation of any of the legacy of the California penal system. I think we can. I mean, among names, but we can look to old Reagan. As a as a person to look as a more of a starting point of the high level incarceration. The general sort of tone though that was quickly spread about her then again was this meteoric rise, but that it was on the backs of like I that she is the living embodiment of the mass incarceration and the challenge with these things. And this is something I will challenge anybody when it gets to like actual data about crime and punishment in every state is most of you probably have no idea of the actual amount of cases being prosecuted in your state. I guarantee you don't know the actual closure rate of law enforcement. And most of you also, for the record, don't care that in most places, law enforcement, I think, closes like 20%, 18 to 20% of most cases, like everywhere. Despite how much, I'm not gonna start a justice discussion on how much we spend on it. However, like these are facts. These are things we can look up. There are actually you can come up with rates. You can look at the what your attorney general office in your state is spending time on, right? It's not fun details if you don't like a particular. It's easier to criticize especially like an attorney general, a mayor, anybody that sits in that spot where you're like, well, they're the person that should be like the buck should stop with them with this particular issue and go like, well, they're not doing enough, right? Or it's not sufficient, or like you need to do more. And but then that argument when you already may feel some sort of way about a person, and not to say that becomes like it becomes like a salient facts, even though you don't have no facts. Right. It's disappointing that folks, I was questionable of the way sis was characterized at the time, but by the time it got to the bricks of it, I didn't have to think about it because she was out of the race. Like it didn't get to the place where I was like, all right, so what's the real data? Like on how many people? Like what's the deeper stuff? Now, to her, the fact that we didn't find out about like nobody did the actual marijuana convictions when you were in San Francisco, that is a tactical error that somebody might have felt like, well, no one's going to ever want to look. I'm like, well, that's cool if you think no one's going to look, but someone's going to look. Right. And if you don't have that data out there, then you don't know. I mean, I live in a city that every time I go somewhere, somebody's like, oh man, how y'all doing out there? How's the crime? Are you gonna make it? I'm like, it's fine. Like it's a major American city. There's stuff happening, but like chill out. Like what you've heard is not, I'm saying like that, and especially if you ain't doing certain things, you come and get you a fancy donut and see something weird and have a great time and go back to where you came from and enjoy the city. Get a craft beer. It'll be fine. Take a trip to the wine country. Head to the coast. Oregon's a beautiful state. Like these, but the notions of something, right? So and the implication within the challenge and why like just I don't want to put a lot of value into these sort of like symbolic, and they're trying to send us a message because I'm like, are they supervillains from a comic book? They got to like kind of telegraph that they're about to do something terrible to you because it makes them feel good. Like, why
But
would
that's
that be
my point.
strategy?
Like, right, are you dealing with a villain that has to broadcast it or just going to harm you?
Right. Yeah, like they just start filing. I just saw a very interesting piece, something David D talking about, and I didn't know about this, but like in the early 2000s, when the record labels and he, shared the article that ran it down, were suing like regular people around their kids, stealing, young people or their kids or whatever, usually their kids, taking download music, what I'm saying, that they didn't pay for.
Mm-hmm.
And they, and the record labels like won lots of lawsuits, settled all these lawsuits where they made hundreds of thousands of dollars and then also put a chilling effect that helped with the overall chilling effect of the like of the file swapping world, because they took money from regular people, like probably some of them wealthier than others, but
Right, right.
you know what I'm saying, and that there's this, because and he was referencing it too, because right now uh the NBA, well, the record labels are suing the NBA around usage of audio on social media platforms for like ads and stuff for song, music that is copywritten, even though those songs are inside the app, right? So like you can use them because the licensing is like, but they're suing it separate. And the thing that it creates is, even if you're using something that I already got access to, like you go, well, you're using it for commercial purposes. I'm not using it for commercial purposes outside of the commercial purpose I paid for when I pay for the ads on the app, right? Like it's
Right.
but the thing that then you're doing is, if you're music companies, you're finding a way to squeeze more money out of something you already own,
Out of an asset, right,
right?
right,
And then you're using the story that the artists need to get paid when you're not paying nobody. You're gonna keep that money. Like, stop lying to me, and even so, like, that type of action is something that they just do. They'll do, like, we need to put out a symbolic message during the Grammys to let people know we're gonna come with these lawsuits. Like, they just
right.
do it. You know what I'm saying? There's no, the whatever thing in the last, when like payday loan, people found out how people that didn't know outside of communities that payday loans was the best way that you could access credit, or the easiest way, or the most accessible way, not the best. um when folks realize, when macro society, larger people realize how terrible those companies business practices were, they started going, oh man, the payday loans, how could they be that way? And it's like, yo, they just do it. Like, in America, if in our world, if someone has the leverage, the position, the means to do something where they can extract in a way that later we go, man, that was unfair. Like the surprise medical, when you get an ambulance and after like 2 months after everything, you get a bill for $40,000 for some shit. It's like, wait a minute, how am I getting a surprise? How am I getting a medical bill for some other stuff that I already paid for, or the medical company, should have been covered in my coverage, and now you're sending me another bill. And
Right.
then, if I don't know no better, I'm fighting with you about trying to take out a loan to pay it. And the reality is, this whole thing may be dubious, but if you could just do it, you just do it. And so I just don't, I just don't see the value. I think it's dangerous. And I think it also a dangerous framing of how to understand what's happening to you in the world, and the powers that be that do things that you think the nefarious thing that you're experiencing is not the nefarious thing, but it's the other thing that they're planning to think about. Because then, more than likely, you're not going to work on the nefarious thing that's actually happening to you. Because you're like, well, what if it's something else? Right. So then you're in that anxiety space where you can't make a decision. Right. You Florida Evans, not trying to let what's his name get that good job, because it might disrupt the family. And it's like, Florida, you gotta let the babies go, Florida. Like, you gotta let
Right.
you gotta let him go to that college. You gotta let her do that other move. I understand you want to protect your children. I understand the psychosocial trauma that you as a black mother had experienced, being where you was in the 70s. Also, you gotta let them babies go. Because we're not gonna get where we need to go if you don't let the babies go. You gotta let them go. You gotta
Right.
train them to fly. And we don't want to be captured by fear, as I see it. So I think that made sense. I think I landed where I was going. If I didn't, that's all right.
Yeah. I mean, I would just say, I think to your point, the truth about things are much deeper than any symbol you think. And it's actually in front of you. You can pull it apart. But that's also why what you take in, where you take it in from, how much of it you take, is it heightens or limits your capacity to see through
Mm,
the mists of the clouds of deception, if you will, use a universal sham god context.
mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to actually have the ability to see through it, and you don't see through it being told the same stuff by the same people over and over and over again, because that doesn't give you the chance to say what if it is true or what if it isn't true. So the ability to be like globally aware of why things are occurring and not getting you, like you said, like seeing a pale horse is the least of your challenges when in certain situations. And
Right.
so, maybe we always continue to open up our lens and our view. And, I know different people learn different ways. So what I'm saying is, not representing the entire machine here, but
Mhm.
also like people like we gotta read.
Yeah.
Like I know it's easier not to, but there's still a lot of information across the globe because we're having this global conversation where people still read newspapers, they still read books, like, and it does actually help you learn it faster. I mean, along with hearing at a certain town, so it's not exclusively that way, but like they read, so it's like don't take for granted what you're seeing because we're living in this visual audio world. Like also kind of go to really what it is and deal with the written word as we're trying to decode the things that actually are happening to us that are very dangerous. And I'll stop by saying like the idea of the far right government in France and what's going on in Hungary, what's happening broadly in the Middle East by just different forces that are as generally as diametrically opposed as you can imagine.
Mhm.
What's happening in this country around the removal of people's rights. That's all happening in front of us globally.
Mhm.
This isn't a conspiracy. It's actually happening.
Yeah.
And may we be aware enough to see what's actually happening and understand that that is more durable, unfortunately, and more impactful than the conspiracy.
Absolutely. So, all right. I mean, I think that's a good place to
I
wrap.
think we did a thing there.
Yeah, I think we got somewhere. Something got done. So, with that, I'll just say peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Good Brothers. Thank you to my good brother, Majestic. Good Brothers is a part of the Ask Your Old Head podcast, and you can support the podcast by listening, rating, and subscribing wherever you listen, sharing, you know what I'm saying? And even more so, if you search Justice Rod G on Patreon, you can become a patron and put a little something in the kitty, you know what I'm saying, to keep these creative work going. All things considered, please check out Supacell and any of the other stories coming from around across the diaspora. And thank you for listening, and we'll be back soon. Peace.